Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Lynn with Little Learner Printables. And as promised, here is my final presentation on the topic of bullying. This is bullying part 5. If you missed any of the other ones, I highly encourage you to go back and watch them. Today's presentation, when parents refuse to acknowledge bullying behavior, strategies for educators and childcare providers. Topics included in this presentation are important steps teachers, providers, and administrators should take, documentation, providing interventions at school or childcare, focusing on safety, provision of resources for parents, even if rejected, major warning signs that termination of care should be considered, and important reality that many providers struggle with emotionally. So let's get started. When parents refuse to acknowledge that their child is engaging in bullying behaviors or are unwilling to consider recommendations from their teachers or childcare providers, it can significantly complicate efforts to help the child develop healthier social skills. Effective intervention requires consistency between home and school. However, children often encounter two very different sets of behavioral expectations. Behaviors that may be tolerated or overlooked at home are frequently unacceptable in educational settings. This inconsistency can confuse children and unintentionally reinforce negative behaviors. When teachers or providers reach out to discuss concerns, it is not uncommon for the school environment or educator to be blamed rather than the behavior being addressed. Meanwhile, the child exhibiting bullying behaviors may continue to negatively impact classmates, creating challenges for the entire learning environment. Today, most schools and childcare programs do have policies designed to address bullying and aggressive behaviors. While educators strive to support every child, there are risks associated with enrolling a child who has a significant history of defiance, aggression, or bullying tendencies. This is why it is critical for childcare providers to gather as much information as possible about a child's temperament, behavior patterns, and developmental needs before enrollment. Unlike public elementary schools, childcare programs often have the ability to determine whether their program is the right fit for a child and family. Providers must carefully evaluate whether they can effectively meet the child's needs while maintaining a safe and positive environment for all children in their care. Enrollment decisions should never be solely based on filling an available opening. While it is admirable to want to help every family, there are times when a provider must honestly discuss alternative options or specialized services if they believe a child's needs exceed what their program can reasonably support. It is important to remember that educators are responsible for the well-being and development of an entire group of children, not just one child. Every child brings unique strengths, challenges, experiences, and family influences into the classroom. A child's home environment can have a significant impact on their behavior, social interactions, and ability to adapt to group settings. One effective strategy is providing families with a comprehensive enrollment questionnaire. This can offer valuable insight into a child's home life, routines, temperament, and developmental needs before they enter the program. Parents should understand that early childhood educators are professionals whose role extends far beyond supervision. Their focus is on supporting children's age-appropriate growth, development, learning, and social and emotional well-being. As a result, educators may have higher behavioral and developmental expectations than some parents because of their specialized training and experience. Here are examples of important enrollment questions. Is your child toilet trained? Does your child generally sleep well at night? How many hours does your child sleep each night? Does your child sleep through the night? What are your child's eating habits? Is your child a picky eater? Does your child typically follow directions at home? What is your discipline method at home? Do you have any behavior concerns about your child? Does your child become frustrated easily? What situations tend to frustrate your child? How does your child respond to disappointment? Are there any medical conditions that would prevent your child from participation and learning? If so, what are they? Is your child on any form of daily medication? If so, what is the purpose for the medication? Does your child have friends outside the home? Does your child generally have a good relationship with other children? What activities does your child enjoy? Are there any activities your child dislikes? If allowed, how much technology or screen time does your child use each day? Is there frequent conflicts within the home? Have there been any major changes in the household during the past 6 months? Has your child attended any other child care program? Does your child separate easily from you? What are your expectations for your child while enrolled in my program? These questions provide a quick snapshot into a child's environment, but can offer valuable information when planning for a successful transition into your care and in preparing lesson plans for this particular child. I strongly urge you to create this as a form, a questionnaire form for your parents, and be sure to include a date slot and a signature slot. Have them fill it out and give it back to you, and then you can make them a copy. Let's take a look at how parents will respond differently to these questions. Some will be completely honest and forthcoming. Some may be reluctant to share personal information, and others may choose not to disclose important details at all. So, for this reason, it is essential to discuss program policies and behavioral expectations thoroughly during the enrollment process. If a provider's approach differs significantly from the strategies used at home, those differences should be openly discussed. Parents should understand the program's expectations and be willing to support them. Likewise, providers should determine whether parents are open to making adjustments at home when current strategies are not effectively supporting their child's development. Successful intervention requires a partnership. Both the family and the educator must work together toward common goals if they truly want to help the child reach their full developmental potential. Providers should also protect themselves professionally. It is important to document concerns and recognize when a child's behavioral challenges existed before enrollment. Educators should not place themselves in a position where they are unfairly blamed for behaviors that were present long before the child entered the program. Ongoing conflict between parents and providers can create an unhealthy working relationship and may ultimately limit the progress that can be made on behalf of the child. Now, this does not mean that a provider should automatically decline enrollment for a child who is displaying challenging behaviors. However, it does mean that providers should carefully consider the child's temperament, developmental needs, and the family's willingness to collaborate. The success of any intervention depends not only on the child's needs, but also on whether the provider has the resources, the training, and support necessary to meet those needs effectively while maintaining a safe, positive environment for all children in the program. In addition, child care providers should clearly explain during the enrollment interview that their program is focused on supporting children's growth and development across all developmental domains. Parents should be informed about what children are expected to learn and develop at their child's age, including social and emotional development, self-regulation, language and literacy, math and science, social studies and physical health, and creative expression. It is important for families to understand that these developmental milestones and skills are not simply suggestions, but they are recognized expectations that help prepare children for kindergarten readiness, future academic, and life success. Unless there is a documented medical, developmental, or educational reason that impacts a child's ability to meet specific milestones, children should be encouraged, supported, and expected to make progress towards age-appropriate developmental goals. Establishing this understanding from the beginning helps create a strong partnership between families and educators and ensures that everyone is working toward the same objectives for the child's growth, learning, and overall well being. Now let's look at what to do if a parent refuses to acknowledge their child's bullying behavior, ignores, and will not accept recommendations from a school or childcare, and gets upset with the teacher or provider. When a parent refuses to acknowledge their child's bullying behavior, becomes defensive, ignores recommendations, or blames the teacher or provider, it is important for the school or child care program to remain calm, professional, consistent, and documentation focused. The goal is to protect all children involved while continuing to offer support and intervention opportunities. Here are important steps that teachers, providers, and administrators should take. Stay professional and avoid emotional confrontation. Parents may feel embarrassed, defensive, guilty, shocked, or fearful about hearing concerns regarding their child's behavior. Even if the parent becomes angry or dismissive, staff should remain calm, factual, and respectful. So avoid arguing with the parent, labeling the child as bad, making personal accusations, and responding emotionally. Instead, focus on specific behaviors, use clear examples, discuss safety and learning environment concerns, emphasize helping the child develop healthier social emotional skills. Here's an example. Today, your child hit another child during centers after being told it was another child's turn. We are concerned because this behavior has happened multiple times and it is affecting the emotional and physical safety of other children. Document everything. Documentation is critical. Teachers and providers should document days and times of incidents, what occurred before the behavior, the exact behavior observed, how staff responded, injuries or emotional impact on others, communication with parents, recommendations that were provided, parents' responses or refusals of support. Documentation protects the children, the teacher and provider, the program, the child displaying the behavior. It also establishes patterns that may require additional intervention. Continue providing interventions at school or childcare. Even if the parent refuses support, the program should still teach emotional regulation skills, model respectful behavior, use consistent consequences, reinforce empathy and problem solving, supervise interactions closely, create behavior support plans if appropriate. Children still need intervention even if parents are resistant. Focus on safety first. If bullying, aggression, threats, intimidation, or physical harm continue, the priority must become protecting all children in the environment. Programs may need to increase supervision, separate child when necessary, modify activities, limit certain interactions, involve administration, follow disciplinary policies consistently. No child should repeatedly feel unsafe because adults are avoiding difficult conversations. Involve the administration early. If a parent repeatedly refuses to cooperate or becomes hostile towards staff, administration should become involved quickly. Administrators can attend meetings, reinforce policies, review documentation, provide additional resources, help create format behavior plans, and determine whether the program can continue meeting the child's needs safely. This also prevents teachers from carrying the burden alone. Provide resources even if rejected. Continue offering resources professionally, even if parents initially refuse them. Examples: social and emotional evaluations, counseling referrals, behavioral support services, parenting resources, pediatrician recommendations, and early intervention services. Some parents may eventually become more receptive after repeated concerns or escalating behaviors. do not minimize the behavior. One of the biggest mistakes adults make is dismissing harmful behavior as kids being kids, boys will be boys, old, they'll grow out of it, they're too young for bullying. While some aggressive behavior can be developmentally common in young children, repeated intentional aggression, intimidation, exclusion, or controlling behavior should never be ignored. Early intervention matters. If a child has a serious negative impact on the rest of the children and the parent refuses to cooperate, when would be the appropriate time to end childcare services for that family, especially if other parents are starting to complain? The appropriate time to end childcare services is when the program can no longer safely meet the needs of the child while also protecting the physical safety, emotional well being, and learning environment of the other children, especially after reasonable interventions and communication efforts have been made and the parent refuses to cooperate. This is one of the hardest decisions a childcare provider or school may face. But in fact, there are situations where continued enrollment is no longer appropriate or safe. Some major warning signs that termination of care should be seriously considered: repeated aggressive or bullying behavior despite interventions, physical harm to other children or staff, ongoing emotional intimidation, threats, or targeting of peers, constant disruption of the classroom environment, significant emotional distress among other children becoming fearful of attending, complaints from other parents, staff being unable to adequately supervise or teach because of one child's behavior, parents refusing meetings, recommendations, evaluations, or behavior plans, and parents becoming hostile, threatening, or verbally abusive toward any staff. Childcare providers and schools have a responsibility not only to the child displaying the behavior, but to every child in their care. If one child's behavior is consistently harming the safety of others, the emotional climate of the classroom, the educational environment, or the well being of staff and families, the provider must consider whether the placement is appropriate. Before termination, programs should generally be able to demonstrate that they communicated concerns clearly to parents, attempted interventions, offered recommendations and resources, used reasonable behavior support strategies, and allowed opportunities for improvement when appropriate. There are, in fact, situations where immediate termination may be necessary, particularly if serious injury occurs, there are threats of violence, a weapon is involved, severe aggression occurs, staff or children are endangered, and parents become threatening towards staff. It is also important to understand that keeping a child enrolled at all costs is not always the most supportive or ethical decision if the environment is no longer appropriate for that child's needs. Some children do require a higher level of behavioral, emotional, and therapeutic support than a childcare setting can reasonably provide. Additionally, when other parents begin complaining, that is often a sign that other children are being negatively affected, families are losing trust in the program's ability to maintain safety, and the classroom climate is deteriorating. Ignoring those concerns can eventually impact enrollment, staff burnout, the program's reputation, and most importantly, the well being of the children. Programs should never shame or label the child. The conversation should remain professional and focused on safety and the program's ability to meet the child's needs. A professional approach might sound like this: at this time, despite multiple interventions and attempts to work together, we do not feel our program is the appropriate setting to safely meet your child's current behavioral needs while also maintaining a safe and emotionally healthy environment for the other children in our care. It is also wise for child care providers to follow their written policies and handbook, consult licensing regulations, involve administration or ownership, provide written documentation, and give proper termination notice unless immediate safety concerns exist. One important reality that many providers struggle with emotionally is this: allowing severe behaviors to continue unchecked can unintentionally harm many other children in the process. Children do deserve a learning environment where they feel physically safe, emotionally secure, and able to learn without chronic fear, intimidation, or disruption. Early accountability, intervention, and boundaries are not punishment. They are part of protecting all children and helping the child displaying the behavior receive the support they truly need. I hope you have found this presentation to be informative and helpful. Please don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. My next presentation will cover what does a healthy home environment look like. Happy teaching!